Pleasure to be back with you this year. Thank you to the host, Kenyatta University, all the dignitaries and officials for inviting Medgar Evers College, City University of New York. I am the Dean of the School of Business at Medgar Evers College and the immediate past president of the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable. I'm going to take 7 minutes. Let me start my stopwatch so that I don't go over my time on the socioeconomic disparities, vulnerable communities, and the future of work and entrepreneurship. And the book is to be released in August of this year. Prepared for this session, I have 2 chapters that addresses some of the reconfiguration and reinvention of some of the concepts and ideas behind the future of work for the labor force specifically. And the intention of the book was to give international voices a mechanism to share their viewpoints from the ground up. A lot of times when we hear about the future of work and the labor force, it is top down, but we wanted to give practitioners, academicians, and others a chance to have a voice in this very important dialogue, other than the consultants who have been working very hard in this area. Our why in doing this is because of global income disparities, and income disparities has been with us for a long time, but post-COVID, the disparities, whether income, wealth, or health, have grown larger. And so we don't just want to talk about the problems, we want to also talk about changing the narrative and some of the solutions that are coming forth. And so some of the solutions that are coming out of India in terms of their ability and execution of upskilling a nation. And then I'll talk about recharging retirees, the Tanzania experience, what they're going through. As many of you know, many of the public servants are forced to retire at a certain age, and many of them have much more contributions that they would like to give. And so they're looking at entrepreneurship, or the study that we have is looking at entrepreneurship. All in all, to summarize, we're talking about public-private partnerships. As most of you know, most of the wealth in the world is in private hands. And so it's not just the public sector that's going to be able to drive this disparity down, but we need private sector help. And developing sustainable ecosystems and collaborations is not good enough to just do it in one pilot in one country, but we would like to see the expansion across the globe. And so I want to talk a little bit about the book in general, so you know the context of the work that we're talking about. It discusses the journey of vulnerable communities in the pursuit of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship we see as economic development from the ground. It further investigates strategies and actions for not just the government, but other organizations to work through some of these new ideas that we see. Almost in every presentation I give, I talk about this chart. And the reason being, it really serves to give you a graphic idea of just what we're talking about. In the chart, it says 10% of the population is driving up to, the darker the map, the more the disparity. In some parts of Africa, you see it's driving up to 70% of the income. What that means to us is that 90% of those populations in those countries are living on the leftovers, which is about 30% or less. Gross in disparity. And so we're sharing with you today is 2 approaches by academicians, one in India and one in Tanzania. So I'm going to breeze through this because we have a few minutes, and I want to make sure we give time to all of the presenters here. But this is post-pandemic, the need to retool and upskill a nation. And even though we're talking about India, many across the world, workforces across the world are finding that they need to retool and upskill their workforce for them to be globally competitive. Okay, so the pandemic has affected people across the world, and I'll just present to you quickly some of the data. It's not just the deaths. Thousands and thousands of people died in several countries. It's not just the deaths. Many fell ill. Many had jobs that went away. Many, when they wanted to come back into the workforce, did not have jobs to come back to. So this chart talks about the global deaths, but it also talks about others in the population who were impacted. So why is this a problem that we should be focused on now? According to the World Economic Forum's The Future of Jobs report, more than 50% of all employees will need to be reskilled by not 20 years from now, but 2 years from now, 2025, as the adoption of technology increases. Be assured that technology is the driver. It did not stop during the pandemic. In fact, it increased during the pandemic. We saw more and more transformation and substitution of technology for labor, and that is going to increase. So in the paper, what we liked about the paper in skill development, these authors were talking about that India does, is it didn't just look at the high end and preparing the tech sector or preparing the university folks. They also talked about increasing vocational training, increasing certification, increasing on-the-job training, a comprehensive approach to sourcing the workforce that's going to be needed for a future that we are still speculating what it will be in both developing and developed countries. So no one country has a fix on this. I'm going to transition real quickly into the seniors and what is happening in Tanzania and many other countries where seniors are forced to retire at a certain age and they may not be ready. The purpose of this study is to explain entrepreneurial activities preferred by retired public workers. That's key because it's the public workers who are typically forced to retire. Describe factors that motivate or compel retired public workers to initiate entrepreneurial ventures and determine challenges facing the retired worker. Here, this chart says that entrepreneurial activities that are sought after by the retirees in the sample were equally split between agriculture and commercial. It also talked about the reasons why retirees would want to go into business. Chief among it is the fear of failing to meet personal and family needs. Many of the retirees, because of the wages that they were on, were not really able to adequately save for retirement. And so they are feeling that they need to do more. And the other one that kind of not surprisingly is after working all of your life and having no effective job to do, you may become bored. And so some of that came up in the data as well. But chief was the desire for long-term wealth and assets, desire for profits and capital gains, desire for financial independence, all financially motivated. Now I'm at the 7-minute mark, so I'm just going to try and tie it up. The challenges, as most of the business folks know, is access to capital in every kind of form. And also they cited legal and regulatory challenges. And so in closing, I want to say that the pandemic gave us new problems, but it made the problems more severe. And so our challenges have to be more creative, more innovative around the workforce that we in higher ed is developing, but also the knowledge that the workforce needs to be reinvigorated in other workforce development areas by both private and public sectors. And will we succeed in everyone? No. All of those folks on the wheel that you saw for India won't necessarily be successes, but as Nelson Mandela, and this is one of my famous quotes, says, "Do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again." Thank you.